Well, hello there, friends. It's me from my channel. And today we are going to be summarizing Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. If you want more summaries of amazing books, please subscribe. All right, let's get started. The story is about an orphan boy named Pip who lives with his harsh sister and her kind husband Joe, who is a blacksmith. One day when Pip is out looking for work, he comes across a terrifying man in the marshes. Pip runs away, and later that night sneaks into the house of a rich benefactor, who turns out to be the very same man from the marsh. Pip is then taken in and given money to study in London so that he can become a gentleman. Now Pip feels ashamed of his humble beginnings and tries to hide them, especially from his newfound friend, Herbert Pocket, a young man also studying to become a gentleman. Pip feels that Joe and his village are beneath him now, and so he treats them with contempt. Joe, in turn, is very hurt by this and is made even more sad by his wife's constant taunts. Meanwhile, Miss Havisham, the rich benefactor, has a daughter named Estella. She was abandoned by her lover Drummle on their wedding day, and she now devotes her life to making other people unhappy by making them fall in love with her unlovable daughter. This is why she takes in Pip and tries to make him fall in love with Estella. And it works. Pip falls head over heels in love with her, though she treats him like dirt. Pip begins to look down on everyone around him, including Herbert, and he squanders his fortune. Eventually, he is left penniless. As it turns out, the mysterious man from the marshes is none other than Magwitch, a former convict who escaped from the same prison camp that Joe helped run many years ago. When the guards came to arrest him, Joe protected Magwitch and therefore received a noble reward. But when Magwitch was brought before the judge, Joe recognized him and testified against him, causing Magwitch to receive a long sentence. Now, when Magwitch is released from prison, he becomes incredibly rich and wants to repay Joe and help Pip. He uses his fortune to bribe a member of parliament so that he can pass a law which will give him British citizenship. Through this, Magwitch hopes to be able to live openly in England and marry his childhood sweetheart Biddy, who just happens to be Pip's cousin. Meanwhile, after Pip runs out of money, he is forced to return home to the village and confront his shameful past. There he learns that Miss Havisham has died and that Estella has married the cruel Drummle, who has been abusive towards her. While Pip is visiting his old home, he runs into Herbert again and tells him about his dire straits. Herbert suggests that they team up and go to South America together to try to strike it rich. In order to do this, Pip needs to find some quick cash. And luckily he finds out that Magwitch had hidden some money in the pocket of his old clothes. Pip takes this money and gives it to Herbert for their trip abroad. But when the police come to arrest Magwitch for escaping from prison, Pip finds himself torn between his gratitude towards Magwitch and his own self-preservation. You see, the law is the law, and if Pip tells the police where Magwitch is hiding, he will go free. But if Pip doesn't tell them, well, then Magwitch will go back to prison for the rest of his life. Pip chooses the latter and helps Magwitch escape. However, while crossing the river, Magwitch is captured and killed. Soon after, Drummle dies as well, leaving Estella all alone. In the end, Pip goes to see her and they begin to console each other. Pip realizes that he loved Estella all this time and that he only wanted to marry her because she represented wealth and status. Pip comes to terms with his humble beginnings and the reality of his situation. He is grateful for the love of those around him, such as Biddy, who has now become a strong, beautiful woman and whom Magwitch wished to marry. Pip knows that he can never repay Magwitch for what he has done for him, but he will always treasure the memory of his kindness and the lessons he learned from him. Pip then reconciles with Joe and lives out the remainder of his days in peace. All right, now that we have finished our summary, let's take a look at some of the major themes in the book. The first is social class. Now, Pip makes it very clear that he thinks he is better than Joe and the villagers, but really he is no better than anyone else. As a matter of fact, he is much worse because he is ungrateful and disregards the source of his wealth. Another theme is guilt and repentance. After Pip learns that Magwitch is his benefactor, he feels guilty for having treated Joe so badly for so long. To Pip, Joe represents innocence and hard work, whereas Magwitch represents crime and selfishness. However, through Magwitch, Pip learns that people aren't always what they seem to be. Later, Pip understands that Magwitch is actually a better person than many of the upper-class gentlemen he has met. Another theme in the book is love. Pip loves Estella, but he doesn't truly know her or care for her as a person. Instead, he loves the idea of her and the status she represents. On the other hand, Estella does not care about anyone. She is cold-hearted and vindictive. The one character who does show true love is Magwitch. He loves England and wants to live there openly. He loves Biddy, and he is willing to do anything for Pip, even though Pip has treated him so poorly in the past. A recurring motif in the book is sight and blindness. Characters in the story often fail to see things as they really are. For example, Pip is blinded by his own pride and arrogance. He cannot see that he is no better than the commoners he looks down upon. Similarly, the other characters are also blinded by their obsessions. Miss Havisham is obsessed with getting revenge on men, so she cannot see that she is doing nothing but hurting herself and others. Magwitch is obsessed with becoming a gentleman, so he cannot see that he is already a gentleman in heart and spirit. Even Estella is blinded by her hatred for all men. She cannot see that there are still good men in the world who would treat her with kindness and respect. Okay, so how are you liking the book so far? Let us know your thoughts about it in the comments section below. And while you're at it, go ahead and subscribe. We would love to have it if you did. Anyways, next, let's talk about some of the symbols in the story. The first is Satis House, the home of Miss Havisham. It is a decaying mansion, which symbolizes the decay of Miss Havisham's mind and soul. Everything about the house points to the idea that it is stuck in the past. For example, all of the clocks are stopped and the furniture is covered in dust. Next, we have the river. The river is a symbol of transition and change. Many important events happen near the river, such as Magwitch's death. Also, Pip crosses the river to go see Magwitch, and this is a symbolic crossing from his old life to his new life. Another symbol in the book is the file. The file is a tool used by Magwitch to escape from prison, and it symbolizes freedom and hope. In addition, the file also represents Magwitch's resourcefulness and determination. Lastly, we have the marshes. The marshes are a symbol of darkness and danger. They represent the unknown and the wild, untamed aspects of nature. Moreover, the marshes symbolize Magwitch's past and his connection to the criminal underworld. Now, speaking of symbols, let's move on to character archetypes. First, we have the hero, and that would be Philip Pirrip, or Pip. Our protagonist goes through many changes throughout the story as he comes to understand the importance of things like humility and compassion. Next, we have the villain, and that would be Miss Havisham. She is consumed by her desire for revenge, and she uses her power and influence to manipulate others and cause them pain. Then we have the mentor archetype, and that would be Joe. He teaches Pip the importance of being true to himself and staying connected to his roots. Furthermore, we have the trickster, and that would be Herbert Pocket. Although he is not a bad person, he is somewhat irresponsible and naive, which causes problems for Pip on occasion. Next, we have the outcast, and that would be Magwitch. As a convict, he is rejected by society, but he is ultimately a kind and generous man who shows more humanity than many of the so-called civilized people he meets. All right, moving on. Let's take a look at some of the major quotes in the book. First, "I was the miserable outcast of my own making." This quote shows Pip's feelings of guilt and shame. He realizes that he is responsible for his unhappy state, and that he has only himself to blame for his misfortune. Next, we have, "It was the best of times, it was the worst of times." This is a famous opening line from the book, and it immediately establishes the novel's main theme, which is duality. It is the best of times for some, and the worst of times for others. Alright, so those were some of the major quotes in the book. Now, if you want to read more books by this author, I would highly recommend A Tale of Two Cities. It is one of my favorite books by him. Other books you might enjoy are Oliver Twist and David Copperfield. Well, that's it for our summary of Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. If you enjoyed it, please let us know in the comments section below. We'll see you next time.